Hello, everyone. We wanted to welcome to My Agreements for Me with Believers, and I am Ray Tuggle, and we will be talking about Lesson 7, Authentic Listening. And here today to join me is...
Sylvia Castillo.
I'm Desiree Duran.
All right, awesome. And what a dynamic crew. And don't they look great? We're actually kind of like sandwiching Sylvia with our white, shirt stuff on today. So,
It's almost, like an Oreo cookie, only inverted.
Oh, yeah.
right?
Still
Yeah,
didn't get the memo.
yeah, no kidding. So, all right, yeah, definitely. I think this is authentic listening was one of the things that oh man, this one I have struggled with for my probably my entire life. And maybe a lot of people on this call, can relate to. Listening is one of the things that I always heard that cliche, hey, you have two ears and one mouth, right? And so it means that you have to listen more than you talk. And for someone that's a talker, that makes it very difficult to just shut up and listen. And so anyway, I definitely think that this verse or this lesson for me, was one of the most challenging ones, at the same time convicting, because when I actually started to practice, what we had talked about here, and we'll go through that, really has started to dial in my life. One of the things that I struggle with was my internal relationships. Those people that are closest to me, my mom, my sister, our siblings, my children, my significant other. And a lot of times, remember, it's just one of those honest, because they know everything about you, they know every quirk, they know all your vulnerabilities. And so being able to talk or listen to hear their side of the story really was like, it was challenging for me. So what about you guys?
I like you struggle with it as well. I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback I've gotten is that I don't listen. Always have a solution. It's interesting because I feel like our upbringing and how our past looks is the reason why we listen the way we do, or if we're like, for me, it was always about solving problems, or attempting to help. And what I've learned over all these years is it's not helpful. And I'm not solving anything if I don't just, like you said, I have two ears and one mouth. If I just would shut my mouth and listen sometimes, it would mean a lot more to the person that is sharing if I didn't attempt to solve their problems or give them feedback or do something helpful, because that's really not what they're looking for. They just want to be heard.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And for me, there were times where I'll listen. I can repeat everything you tell me. However, sometimes I'm listening to respond and
Mhm.
not to hear. And so, just like you, Sylvia, I'm already, as they're speaking, I'm already having a resolution for them. And then I get excited, like, I can help you. I can help you. Like, I get excited. I want to tell you. And so a hard part for me was interruption. And so I would get too excited and I didn't want to lose what I was going to say. So I would kind of cut them off. And then I was reading this book with this really good friend of mine. And as we were reading, he had told me, hey, listen, I'm going to teach you something. And it's called the 30-second rule, but I reduced it to 10 seconds because 30 seconds is just too long. But what happens is when somebody's speaking, you need to be quiet. And when they're finished, count to 10. And if they're finished speaking, then it's your turn. And that just lets them know that you are really listening, that you're really showing up for them, that your ears are open. But it's also such a huge gesture of love and respect. And I believe we talk about that in here.
Mhm.
Yes, it's listening is an act of love. It is respectful and builds trust. And it says you demonstrate love when you give your time, your attention, your ears, and hopefully your heart to another. And so that has worked wonders. And
Mhm.
sometimes I have to remind myself, okay, even if it's, forgive me for saying this, but sometimes when somebody's speaking and they just go on and on and on, you're just like, God, shut up. You still have to give them that respect, you
Mhm.
know? And so that has worked great, but I still struggle too in interrupting. I
I,
need to
I,
work. I
I'd like
need
to.
I need to work on that. I need to work on that.
I'm a big one. Oh, yeah, I still, even after all of this growth work, it's still one of my things that I struggle with, for sure. And I'm sure that each of you have felt me do that. So I apologize in advance.
No, trust me, we're in the same boat. I was that guy. I mean, I always have something I think is valuable to say. So I want to just like the moment she's done, I want to just, oh, blah, 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 right? So I've got my machine guns ready to go and actually just come out firing. One of the things I wanted to add to what Desiree was saying, because I was actually listening, um, was, when you talked about someone who's long-winded, or wanting to keep talking and talking, if you really probably trace that back, and the reason why I say this is because I've studied this, is because they haven't been heard. And so they are taking every opportunity to say everything that they can say so that they can get it all out, because they're afraid of the fact of someone not actually listening to what they were saying. So they want to get it all out a lot of times. It's not always the case. However, people who have a lot to say like that, and they'll say five things. And a lot of times as a person who's listening, it is difficult to keep up with the five things. And so a lot of that time is that you preface this with, and this was something I had to learn. Is this something you just want me to, you're just venting and you want to go ahead and actually just get off your chest? Or is this something that you want me, just to listen or fix, right? Or help solve? That premise was valuable for me as a a man in a relationship, because I was always a fixer. I'm looking to solve, I'm looking to get and actually come up with 1,000 things to offer you. And it didn't serve me because my person that was speaking didn't feel heard, didn't feel validated, it didn't feel valued. And
Mm.
so, that's why I just say, so sometimes it's also for the listener, like you said, being patient, because that person's probably been hurt in the past, or they have not been heard. And so someone who's just sharing a blah, a lot of stuff, it's, man, you're giving them the best gift. I think in here we talked about it's a gift to get and actually allow them, and it shows love for someone just to be heard,
Yeah, agreed, 100%. The other thing that comes up a lot of time in, conscious conversations and authentic listening is the idea of I need to give advice. And, that's one thing too, where instead of just giving someone something, asking for permission or asking if they would like feedback from a different perspective, I think can be helpful.
Mhm.
Listening also.
That kind of fits in with our verse, Proverbs 18:13, where it talks about if one gives an answer before he hears, it is folly and shame. So a lot of times we think we're so wise because we have something to offer. And the truth is that they weren't ready to receive it, or they didn't want to hear it, or they didn't need that. They didn't ask for it.
Yeah, in James 1:19, it also says, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And quick to listen is so huge, especially, for moms and significant others. If you're a leader,
Mm-hmm.
you're showing great leadership and you're showing great, well, if I was going to my boss and she wasn't listening, that would create so much frustration and so much like how I don't think I would get the help that I would need, right? And for moms, especially moms, how many times are we driving and your kids just going, going, going? And you're like, but because I've been guilty of that. But when you really take the time to listen, you're developing that trust and you're developing that relationship with your children. And I think that's so imperative when they're little, because when they become teenagers, they're going to want to be able to speak to you and they're going to want to be honest with you because you're listening and they know that you're that ear that they can depend on and lean on and trust, so.
Yeah, I think that's so important, especially as a mom or dad and family, especially I want to say even at the table or now with cell phones being, like how often do you put that away and just be present to the conversation?
Mm-hmm.
You've even heard of etiquette where like if you go out to lunch or what's coffee with someone else, like don't even have your phone out, like be present 100%,
Yeah, that reminds me. So we were setting goals this year, and one of the things that sounds pretty sad or terrible to have to say, but I needed to create a goal for myself, a habit, so that when we're actually at breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or present with one another, my phone is actually put away. Like I don't have my phone out. And I had to actually thoughtfully be able to create that as a daily task, like a daily goal to happen, because I didn't have that habit. And then what would happen is it would show up. Now, here's another funny thing that we didn't discuss is that, like, I guess so my Kristen, my girlfriend, like when I'm on the phone and I'm talking to her, she can tell when I'm actually not present. So a lot of times we think that we're slick, or we think that, hey, I'm really present with you, yet I'm still doing other things. And truth of the matter is, our language gives it away. Of course, it doesn't help that she's a behavioral therapist. So I would say, yep, or uh-huh. And she would trigger, go like, okay, hey, what did I just say? And I'm like, oh, I just been busted, because I really don't want to. I go, well, why should I have to repeat what you just said? And the truth of the matter is, I just didn't hear what she had to say. And that's embarrassing. And at the same time, I realize that being present doesn't mean just when you're in front of someone. It also means, when you're on the phone with them, or, or whatever. So, a lot of times I had to really take a look at that, because even with my children, you know, because again, when someone else is listening to what I was doing, it's like, wow, you were just always talking about yourself. And like, you really didn't like follow up or say what they said. So another thing that I instituted that I think is a great active listening tool is to repeat what someone else has said. So just to make for clarity, right? So for me, it was like sender, receiver, like, okay, Sylvia said something. Hey, Sylvia, let me make sure I understand what you just said. Because there's a lot of times too, intention of what someone is saying and what someone is hearing are way different. So it has helped me in my relationships be able to say, hey, look, Alexis, I hear what you're saying. And is this accurate from what I'm hearing? And so a lot of times I find that it's not accurate. Okay. And so the more that I do that, the more in tuned I become to really listening to what is happening, because my intention is to listen to what they're saying so that I can repeat it back. And if you ever had that, a student, like, hey, okay, we're gonna get and actually, share some things with you, and then we're gonna call on some people to gonna actually give us an answer. Well, those people are actually paying attention so that they don't get called on because they don't know the answer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, we've implemented that too, at dinner time. Like, phones are not allowed, because in the beginning we weren't very, mindful of it. But then we're realizing, okay, we're trying to create us sitting at the table as a family, and talking about our day and connecting, and this is the time where they get to unwind, and this is family time. And all of them were just on their phones, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't working for me. So the rule of thumb is, your phones, we have a little box so that they go in. And so those go in there, and then they all sit down to dinner. And I'll tell you what, we know all the tea. We hear all of it. And it's cool because they like sharing it, and it's just this family time. And so now if we go, like, if one of the kids aren't here or whatever, they're like, we want our family time. Like, now it's become this craving that it's just family time. There's nothing extra. I do want to add this. There's a scripture, and it says, it's Jeremiah, and it's God speaking to Jeremiah, and he tells him, when you call on me and come and pray to me, I will listen to you. And it's Jeremiah 29:12. And what's great about that is, even God understands how important it is to listen. And he was telling Jeremiah, for whatever reason, he might have been feeling, because this is when he called him, right, to become a prophet. And Jeremiah was just a kid, but he was scared, and he was feeling all of these things. But God is telling him, hey, I'm here to listen to you. So imagine if we're like praying to God and we're so excited, and God's just not listening to us. Like, how would that make us feel as his children? And so to put that in perspective, and to think about how, if God takes the time, he rules it all, owns it all, is everywhere, knows it all, it can take the time and listen to us, then who are we to not follow suit with people who are speaking to us? So little another nugget
Yeah,
of conviction.
well, no, that's actually really beautiful. And I think, though, if you think about it, if you really institute some of this stuff like you're doing, you're seeing the results that you've always dreamed of, that you really want. And it's basically deeper connected relationships, right? And so ironically, so my sister married us into the Samoan family. And so in the Samoan culture, which a lot of them are Christian, they literally have story time. What they do is they share with one another like they'll read the Bible, but they'll bring everybody collective together. And so it was really cool because like for dinner, before they even touch dinner, everybody comes together. The actual elder or the oldest person will go ahead and actually read the Bible and then share a story. And it was just so powerful to see everybody engage. And like you said, they start to look forward to it because everybody wants to, one, have a sense of belonging. The other piece is they really just want to be able to be heard. And at the same time, I think because we're not always tying in the elder with the younger, there's a lot of wisdom to be shared. And so that's at being still with each other. And it also gains that respect, right? Because they really respected, their elders and the fact that, hey, look, they had a lot to offer. And a lot of times, unless your ears are open, how will they hear without a preacher? How will they hear without a teacher? They just think that they know. So then that's where the ego and the pride and all the other things, the 3 commandments of the adversary, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and pride of life come in. And so I think that's very, very valuable with what you were saying about the table. I think, sitting down and doing that stuff. Yeah, I think that was pretty cool. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to point out is that it's, in the book, when we're talking about what is authentic listening, it says that either way says a lot about your level of care for the people you're listening to. And it also can say much more about the level of care that you have for yourself. So it is, really important that when you're an authentic listener, first of all, we started off that with authentic. Authentic means you're being true to yourself, right? But then you're also true to someone else. So if you're true to yourself and you know that it's the right thing to do, but then you're true to someone else because you're allowing them to see you as this person who's really listening, then that's authenticity, right? Because they know that you value them, they can value you. And so it's really important to get and actually just provide that. And, in there, we use the 3 ways of listening. I mean, we got caught up with the first way, which is I agree with you so that I can agree and tell you what I think, right? To kind of like one up almost in a sense, right? I agree with you, Des. I really didn't hear what you said, but hey, I agree with you. And you know what, by the way, so-and-so, the other pay is, I agree, but I disagree so that I can go and actually be right. Right. So a lot of times we want to be right. And then the other part is actually just not even just listening to understand and not be understood. And so that was a huge lesson for me, because I didn't realize how much secret pride, subverted pride I had to be this person who had so much value and wisdom to offer someone. And again, like, Sylvia was saying, it wasn't always welcome and it wasn't always, they weren't always wanting to hear that. And so it was really just a good lesson for me, so this lesson was very, very impacting for me.
Yeah, it's a good lesson there. The clarifying questions as the exercise, I think is really important to take some time and really think about that. One of those first questions is who in your life does not feel heard by you? I mean, I think to sit with that, I don't know, just brings a lot of awareness and potentially a lot of healing if we decide to really investigate that, who that might be, over how long of a span have they not been heard. I think about my son when I think about this and how like with his father, he's just, if his father could just know that he just wanted him to close his mouth and listen and hear his perspective and have some understanding, their relationship today might look a lot different than it actually does. And so there's just a lot to be gained by someone feeling heard and understood.
I think the one thing that I would like to add to that is you might have to ask. Like, I mean, this is the very difficult thing to do oftentimes, so I had to ask my son the other night, and actually it was a lesson for him, is that, I was finding that my son was really kind of like looking to parent me, so he was talking to me in a way that was very, I don't want to say condescending, not meaning to, it was an awareness. So when I brought that awareness up to him, he had no idea that he was coming off as someone who was all this knowledgeable and wisdom, and yet really kind of like not actually hearing what I had to say, for what I had to offer him. And when we came to understanding that he was actually listening to hear what I had to say, he apologized and realized that, hey, this also shows up in his life, because he brought up a situation at work where he was coming off as this, person, and he didn't realize that this is how he was showing up. And so he changed his approach and really was just listening to his employee and said, wow, that really kind of like just made a whole difference in their relationship. So that's why sometimes you just need to ask the people in your life, am I really showing up and actually, listening to you? Or do you feel as if you're being heard? And it can be very humbling, so just be prepared for that conversation. My daughter was an example for me is I thought I was doing the right thing. And then when I asked my daughter, look, do you actually feel heard from me? And she was like very, very clear to say, no, not at all. And I mean, that pierced my heart, don't get me wrong. However, what it really did though, is really show me and how proud I was that she was willing to be able to stand and tell me that truth, and then just be able to receive that. And that really was a catalyst turning point for our relationship. Because I don't think anyone ever really told me that, hey, shut up, and just let me talk and let me listen, or let me be heard. So yeah, that was big for me.
And I think that's so important for our children because we're so used to being the parent. And I know for me, I have an adult child, and
Yeah.
that child, I feel, and I was speaking to Ray about this, I feel like it's more difficult to be a parent to adult children than to
Yeah.
younger children because I'm used to being mom. But when you have adult children, I'm learning how to just navigate that, but also listen more. And I don't
Mhm.
get to have a say over her life any longer because
Yeah.
she's an adult. And so learning to break that, or not break it, but revamp that relationship, it's challenging. But you're
Mhm.
right, they need to be heard, I think, even on a greater scale because they are adults. We don't get to say anything,
Yeah.
unless it's warranted by
Yeah,
them.
for me, what really came in was to say, especially for my kids now, hey, look, is this something that you just want me to listen to you and hear what you have to say, or is it something that you're looking for some advice, right? And I can almost tell you that in their pride, a lot of times in their immaturity, they're still going to go with, hey, I just want you to hear me. I don't want you to solve anything. And enough of that, eventually they know that they can trust you to go ahead and actually be okay with whatever they're deciding. Because remember, they're still growing into their own confidence, to their own life, and they want to break that umbilical cord. And so eventually they know that you're a safe place. And I think that's the biggest thing for us as parents, is to be able to provide our kids with a safe place, a safe space. And then eventually they know how to draw from the well, right? They need to know that it's a well to be drawn from. And so if they know that they can come to the well without any persecution, without any judgment, without any, fixing or whatever, then they will actually know that that water to draw from is pure, and that it, has nothing but love and, goodness for them. Then they will start coming back to the well a little bit. They might not draw from it. They might not draw from it. They're just coming to see if it's okay. Is it safe? Is it safe? And then eventually they're going to start drawing from the well. And then boom, eventually they're going to create their own well, and they're going to have that for their own children. And so we are mimicking, just like Christ, just follow his example, just trust in the process. However, we have to show up in that way that they feel safe, just like we do with Christ.
Absolutely. That's so good.
You know.
Good conversations.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that, this is the first step of really implementing the above the line thinking, because I'm sure our thoughts become things. And if we're thinking about something before someone else is speaking, we're actually below the line thinking when we're thinking instead of listening.
Can I say what's really cool about us getting, gathering together and teaching these or speaking about these lessons every week
Mhm.
is it is like I learn something every single time. I'm taking
Mhm.
something away every single time.
Mhm.
And the words we wrote, I'm still learning and I'm
Yeah.
still, getting nuggets, fresh nuggets every single time. So it is
Mhm.
so cool. It's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. For me too. I mean, trust me, a lot of this is that, again, I think, for me is that when you want to start talking the talk, I know that I get bothered when I don't want to, when I start not walking the talk. And so now it's actually really helped me to look at my life in a serious way of, hey, look, not only did I talk about it, now I get to start executing and walking it. So it's just good. And, I appreciate the accountability. And that's what I want to just say for this, is to encourage people that are doing this lesson or going through this book, is don't do it alone, and, find some people that you can actually do this with. And, we're here for you. And of course, we're a resource, but there's nothing like really gathering with someone and really kind of going through this and, creating a sense of community, or a sense of small group, whatever you want to call that, you know, together. Eventually, we're going to take all the nuggets that we get from all this and create a teacher's manual and allow people to go and actually be doing that. However, until then, you know, don't let anything stop you from gathering together with like believers, you know, and creating what you want and what you desire. And, you know, we have a Monday night Zoom call that we have as open forum to talk about lessons and stuff like that. And that's, you know, just where you can hopefully see, again, just feel plugged in. And either way, you know, even he agrees, you know.
That Jakey.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
so sorry. I don't know what's going down over there, but
It's okay.
yeah,
We have no
need to
worries.
check it out. So,
Awesome.
well, thanks for joining us, and we will see you on the next lesson.
All right.